She told him it was one night. He showed up later saying, "Not for me." My name is Emma Carter, and I'm 28 years old. I work as an architect in Chicago. This story is about how a one-night stand refused to stay one night. It started 3 months ago. I was at a conference, architecture and design, networking events every night. I'm not usually the type to hook up with strangers, but I had just gotten out of a bad relationship, needed to feel something other than heartbreak. On the second night, there was a party. Hotel bar, open bar. I was drinking more than usual. That's when I saw him. Tall, dark hair, sharp suit, confident smile. He was standing alone, looking at his phone. I walked over, liquid courage making me bold. "You look bored," I said. "I am," he replied. "These events are torture." "Then why come?" I asked. "Work," he said. "I'm Ethan Cross, venture capitalist. You?" "Emma Carter," I introduced myself. "Architect." We talked for hours about work, about life, about everything and nothing. The chemistry was instant, intense. "Want to get out of here?" Ethan asked eventually. "My room or yours?" I replied. "Mine," Ethan said. We went to his suite. What happened next was intense, passionate, the kind of connection that felt rare. Afterward, lying in bed, Ethan asked a question. "Can I see you again?" he said. "This is just one night," I replied. "Why?" Ethan asked. "Because I'm not looking for anything serious," I explained. "I just got out of a relationship. I'm not ready." "Fair enough," Ethan said, but he didn't sound convinced. The next morning, I left early, before Ethan woke up, left a note saying thanks, but this was just one night. Went back to my life. 2 weeks later, Ethan showed up at my office. "How did you find me?" I asked, shocked to see him. "You told me where you work," Ethan said. "I did research." "That's stalking," I pointed out. "It's persistent," Ethan corrected. "I thought we agreed this was one night," I said. "You agreed," Ethan replied. "I didn't. Not for me." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means one night wasn't enough," Ethan explained. "It means I can't stop thinking about you. It means I want more." "I told you I'm not ready," I argued. "Then I'll wait," Ethan said. "I'm not asking you to date me, just have coffee, talk, see if this connection was real or just the alcohol." "It was just one night," I insisted. "Not for me," Ethan repeated. "For me, it was the start of something." Against my better judgment, I agreed to coffee. We met the next day, at a cafe near my office. "This doesn't mean anything," I warned. "Just coffee," Ethan agreed. We talked for 2 hours about architecture, about his investments, about our lives. The chemistry was still there, undeniable. "Can I see you again?" Ethan asked when we were leaving. "Ethan," I started. "Just dinner," he said. "One dinner. Then, if you want me to leave you alone, I will." "One dinner," I agreed. We had dinner 3 days later, then another dinner the next week, then drinks, then lunch. Then, suddenly, we were seeing each other regularly. "This isn't what I wanted," I told Ethan after a month. "What did you want?" Ethan asked. "One night," I said, "to feel something and move on." "And now?" Ethan pressed. "Now I'm confused," I admitted, "because this feels like dating." "It is dating," Ethan said. "No," I argued. "I told you from the start this was just one night." "And I told you from the start that it wasn't," Ethan replied. "Not for me." "You can't just decide that," I said. "I didn't decide," Ethan explained. "I felt, and what I felt was that one night with you was better than months with anyone else." That scared me more than anything. 2 months after that conference, I tried to end things. "Whatever this is, we need to stop," I told Ethan. "Why?" he asked. "Because I'm not ready for a relationship," I explained. "Because you're getting attached and I can't give you what you want." "What do I want?" Ethan asked. "I don't know," I said. "A girlfriend, a relationship, something serious." "And what do you want?" Ethan pressed. "To not get hurt again," I admitted. "My last relationship destroyed me. I'm not ready to risk that." "I'm not him," Ethan said. "I know," I replied, "but that doesn't change how I feel." "Then feel it," Ethan suggested. "Feel the fear, but don't let it stop you from living." "This is too much," I said. "You're too much. Too intense, too persistent, too invested in something I said was one night." "Maybe," Ethan agreed, "but I'd rather be too much than miss out on something real." I didn't end things. Couldn't, because Ethan was right. What we had felt real. 3 months after that conference, Ethan met my friends. They loved him, thought he was perfect. "He's great," my best friend Sarah said. "But," I prompted. "But you seem scared," Sarah observed. "I am," I admitted. "Why?" Sarah asked. "Because this wasn't supposed to happen," I explained. "It was supposed to be one night." "Sometimes one night turns into more," Sarah said, "if you let it." 4 months in, I met Ethan's family. His parents, his sister, they were welcoming, kind. His mother pulled me aside. "Ethan talks about you constantly," she said. "That's nice," I replied. "He said you tried to make it just one night," his mother continued.
"I did," I confirmed. "I'm glad he didn't listen," she said. "My son knows what he wants, and apparently he wants you." 5 months after that conference, Ethan asked me to move in with him. We were at his apartment, having dinner. "I have a question," Ethan said. "Okay," I replied. "Move in with me," he said. "What?" I asked, shocked. "Move in with me," Ethan repeated. "We're together constantly anyway. Why maintain 2 places?" "Because moving in is serious," I argued. "We are serious," Ethan countered. "No," I said. "I told you from the beginning this was casual." "Emma," Ethan said, "it's been 5 months. We see each other every day. You have clothes at my place. I have a toothbrush at yours. This stopped being casual months ago." "I'm not ready," I said. "You keep saying that," Ethan replied, "but when will you be ready?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Then take a chance," Ethan suggested. "Move in, see what happens. If it doesn't work, you can leave. But at least try." "I need to think about it," I said. "Take your time," Ethan agreed, "but know this, I'm all in. I have been since that first night, whether you want to admit it or not." 1 week later, I moved in. Not because I was ready, but because Ethan was right. We were already living together in everything but name. 6 months after that conference, we were fully domestic, cooking together, grocery shopping, falling into routines. "This is terrifying," I told Ethan one night. "What is?" he asked. "This," I said. "Us. How normal it feels." "Why is that terrifying?" Ethan asked. "Because I keep waiting for it to fall apart," I admitted, like my last relationship did. "I'm not him," Ethan reminded me. "I know," I said, "but fear doesn't care about logic." "Then let me prove it to you," Ethan suggested, "every day, that I'm not going anywhere, that this is real." 7 months in, Ethan said he loved me. We were watching a movie, on the couch. "I love you," he said, casually, like it was obvious. "What?" I said, sitting up. "I love you," Ethan repeated. "I have for months. Just wanted you to know." "You can't just say that," I argued. "Why not?" Ethan asked. "Because love is complicated," I said. "Love is simple," Ethan corrected. "I love you. That's it. Nothing complicated about it." "I don't know if I can say it back," I admitted. "I didn't ask you to," Ethan said. "I just wanted you to know how I feel." 8 months after that conference, I finally said it back. We were in bed. Ethan was asleep. I whispered it, so quietly I wasn't sure he heard. "I love you too," I said. Ethan opened his eyes. "What did you say?" he asked. "I love you," I repeated. Louder this time. Ethan smiled, pulled me close. "Took you long enough," he said. "I was scared," I admitted. "I know," Ethan replied, "but we're past that now." "Are we?" I asked. "We are," Ethan confirmed, "because you just admitted it, to yourself and to me, that this stopped being one night a long time ago." 9 months in, we talked about the future, about where this was going. "What do you want?" Ethan asked. "From this, from us?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Do you want marriage? Kids? A house in the suburbs? Eventually, I said. Maybe. Do you? Yes, Ethan confirmed. All of it, with you. That's a lot of pressure, I pointed out. It's honesty, Ethan corrected. I'm not trying to pressure you, just telling you what I want, so you can decide if you want the same. 10 months after that conference, Ethan proposed. We were back at the hotel where we met, at the bar where we first talked. This is where it started, Ethan said. Where what started? I asked. Us, Ethan replied, even though you insisted it was just one night. He pulled out a ring. Emma Carter, will you marry me? He asked. I thought this was one night, I said, tears in my eyes. It was supposed to be, Ethan agreed, but not for me. For me, it was the beginning, the start of falling in love with you, of building a life with you, of wanting forever. I said yes. 1 year after that conference, we got married. Small ceremony, close friends and family. In my vows, I talked about that night, about trying to make it casual, about Ethan refusing to accept that. In his vows, Ethan talked about knowing, about seeing me and knowing one night would never be enough. Emma tried to tell me it was one night, he said. I showed up later and said, not for me, because I knew, from the moment we started talking, that one night with her was worth more than a lifetime with anyone else. That's what I tell people when they ask about us. I told him it was one night. He refused to accept that, kept showing up, kept insisting it was more, until I finally admitted he was right. But marriage wasn't simple. The first year was an adjustment, learning to be married, learning to trust completely. 18 months after that conference, we had our first major fight about my ex. He had reached out, wanted to meet for coffee, apologize for how things ended. Absolutely not, Ethan said when I told him. You don't get to decide that, I argued. I do when it comes to protecting our marriage, he countered. I'm not protecting him, I said. I just want closure. You already have closure, Ethan replied. You married me. Meeting him opens doors that should stay closed. You're being controlling, I accused. I'm being protective, Ethan corrected. There's a difference. We didn't speak for 2 days, the longest silence since we met. Finally, Ethan apologized. You're right, he said. I can't control who you meet, but I can tell you it scares me. Scares you how? I asked. That you'll realize you made a mistake, Ethan admitted. That one night turning into forever wasn't what you really wanted. I didn't meet my ex, not because Ethan asked, but because I realized he was right. That chapter was closed. 2 years after that conference, I got pregnant. It wasn't planned. We had talked about kids, but not yet, not this soon. I'm pregnant, I told Ethan. Okay, he said. Okay, I repeated. That's it? What do you want me to say? Ethan asked. I don't know, I admitted. Something more than okay. I'm happy, Ethan said, surprised but happy. Are you? I'm terrified, I confessed. Of what? Ethan asked. Of everything, I said. Of being a mother, of our lives changing, of losing us in the chaos. We won't lose us, Ethan promised. We'll just become more. Our son was born 8 months later. We named him Jake. He was perfect and exhausting. The first year was brutal. No sleep, constant crying, feeling like I was losing myself. I can't do this, I told Ethan one night, crying from exhaustion. Yes, you can, Ethan said. We can, together. I don't know who I am anymore, I admitted. You're a mother, Ethan said, and an architect, and my wife, and yourself. You're all of it. 3 years after that conference, we were adjusting to parenthood, finding our rhythm, learning to balance everything. Do you ever regret it? I asked Ethan one night. Regret what? He replied. Chasing me, I explained, after I said it was one night. Showing up at my office, insisting we try. Never, Ethan said. Best decision I ever made. Even with how hard it's been? I asked. Especially because of how hard it's been, Ethan replied. Easy things don't matter. Hard things we fight for, those matter. 4 years after that night, Ethan's company went through changes. He was working longer hours, traveling more, gone for days at a time. I feel like I'm doing this alone, I told him. I know, Ethan said, and I'm sorry. Then change something, I argued. I'm trying, Ethan replied, but this is my career. This is what supports us. I have a career too, I pointed out. One you barely work at anymore, Ethan said, then immediately regretted. That was low, I said. Emma, I'm sorry, Ethan started. You think I gave up my career? I asked. You think staying home with Jake isn't work? I didn't mean it like that, Ethan said. Then how did you mean it? I demanded. We went to counseling, learned to communicate better, to share responsibilities, to remember we were partners. 5 years after that conference, we had another baby, a daughter. We named her Lily. 2 kids, 2 careers, a marriage that needed constant work. This is harder than I expected, I admitted to Ethan. What is? He asked. All of it, I said. Being a mother, being a wife, trying to maintain my identity. You're doing great, Ethan assured me. Am I? I asked, because I feel like I'm failing at everything. You're not failing, Ethan said. You're human. 6 years after that night, I went back to work full-time, hired a nanny, started taking on projects again. Ethan was supportive, but also struggling with his own guilt. I feel like I'm missing everything, he said. You are, I replied, honestly. Then I need to change that, Ethan decided. He cut back his hours, started working from home more, being more present. 7 years after that conference, we renewed our vows, with our kids watching. In my vows, I talked about 7 years, about how one night became forever. In his vows, Ethan repeated what he said that first time. Not for me, he said. One night was never enough. 7 years later, it's still not enough. I want 70 more years. 8 years after that night, Jake started asking questions about how we met. How did you meet Daddy? He asked. At a conference, I explained. We met at a party. Did you know you'd marry him? Jake pressed. No, I admitted. I thought it was just one night. What changed your mind? Jake asked. Your father did, I said. He wouldn't give up, showed me what we could have. 9 years after that conference, we bought a house, in the suburbs, with a yard for the kids. This is surreal, I said, moving to the suburbs. We're becoming our parents, Ethan joked. Is that bad? I asked. Not if it means we're doing it right, Ethan replied. 10 years after that night at the conference, we threw a party. A decade since we met. A decade since I tried to make it just one night. In my speech, I reflected on 10 years. 10 years ago, I said, I met someone at a conference, had what I thought would be one night, told him it was casual, nothing serious. Then he showed up at my office, said, not for me. Those 3 words changed everything, because Ethan refused to accept my boundaries, pushed past my walls, insisted we try. And I'm grateful he did, because this decade has been everything. Ethan's speech was about persistence and knowing. 10 years ago, he said, I met someone who tried to push me away, who said one night and meant it. I said not for me and meant that too, because I knew from the moment we started talking that she was special, worth fighting for, worth the risk. I was right. These 10 years proved it. 11 years after that conference, Jake started school. Both kids were growing up, lives were getting busier. When did we get old? I asked Ethan. We're not old, he replied. We're in our 30s, I pointed out. With 2 kids, a mortgage, school schedules. That's old. That's life, Ethan corrected. The life we built. 12 years after that night, I was promoted. Senior architect. My own team, major projects. Ethan was proud, but also adjusting. You're gone a lot now, he observed. I know, I said. How does it feel? Ethan asked. Fair, I admitted, since you were gone a lot for years. Touché, Ethan agreed. 13 years after that conference, Ethan's father passed away. He grieved hard, withdrew. I sat with him, let him process. He was a good man, Ethan said. He was, I agreed. I wish he'd known the kids better, Ethan said. He knew them, I replied. He loved them. Loved you. I hope I'm as good a father, Ethan said. You are, I promised. 14 years after that night, we took a family vacation. Just us. No work, no distractions. This is nice, Ethan said. Just being together. It is, I agreed. Do you remember that conference? Ethan asked. Of course, I said. How could I forget? Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't shown up at your office? Ethan asked. Sometimes, I admitted. What do you think would have happened? Ethan pressed. I think I would have missed out, I said, on the best thing in my life. 15 years after that conference, we faced a crisis. I found out Ethan had been lying about work, about a project, about why he was gone so much. You lied to me, I said. I know, Ethan admitted. Why? I demanded. Because I didn't want you to worry, Ethan explained. The company was struggling. I was trying to fix it. You still should have told me, I argued. You're right, Ethan agreed. I'm sorry. We went back to counseling, worked through the trust issues, remembered why we fought for this. 16 years after that night, things stabilized. Ethan's company recovered. Our marriage was stronger. The kids were thriving. We made it, I told Ethan, through the hardest year. We did, he agreed. Do you regret it? I asked. Any of it? Never, Ethan said. Even when it was hard? Even when we almost didn't make it? I chose you 16 years ago. I'd choose you again. 17 years after that conference, Jake graduated high school. Our baby was leaving for college. I'm not ready, I told Ethan. Me neither, he agreed. But he is ready. That's what matters. 18 years after that night, Lily started high school. The house felt emptier. We had more time, just us. This is strange, I said, being just us again. Like at the beginning, Ethan agreed, except we're older now, wiser, more scarred. But still us, I said. Still us, Ethan confirmed. 19 years after that conference, we faced another challenge. My mother got sick, cancer, aggressive. I needed to help care for her, be there constantly. Ethan supported me, took time off work, handled the kids, let me focus on my mom. Thank you, I told him, for holding everything together. That's what partners do, Ethan said. We hold each other together. 20 years after that night at the conference, we celebrated big. 2 decades since we met. 2 decades since I said one night. Since Ethan said, not for me. In my speech, I reflected on 20 years. 20 years ago, I said, I was trying to protect myself from getting hurt again, from risking my heart. So I told someone it was just one night. He refused to accept that, showed up, persisted, wore me down. I'm grateful he did, because these 20 years have been everything. The good, the bad, the hard, all of it, worth it, because we chose each other. Ethan's speech was emotional. 20 years ago, he said, I met someone who was scared, who had been hurt, who didn't want to risk again. I could have accepted her boundaries, walked away, respected her wish for one night, but I didn't, because I saw something in her, something worth fighting for. I said, not for me, and I meant it. 20 years later, I still mean it. One night will never be enough. I want every night, for the rest of our lives. After the party, we sat alone. 20 years, I said. 2 decades since you refused to let it be one night. Best decision I ever made, Ethan replied. Refusing to accept what you wanted, I asked. Seeing what you needed, Ethan corrected. Which was, I pressed. Someone who wouldn't give up, Ethan said. Someone who would fight for you even when you fought against it. You were right, I admitted. I needed that. I needed you. 21 years after that conference, my mother passed away. I was devastated. Ethan held me through the grief, let me fall apart, then helped me put myself back together. She liked you, I told Ethan. Eventually. Eventually? Ethan asked. At first, she thought you were too persistent, showing up at my office, not accepting my boundaries. What changed her mind? Ethan asked. Seeing how happy I was, I said. Seeing that you were good for me. 22 years after that night, Jake got engaged to someone he met in college. Our baby was getting married. I can't believe it, I told Ethan. He's 20, I said. We were 28 when we met. 29 when we married. Still, I argued, he's my baby. He's a man, Ethan corrected, building his own life. 23 years after that conference, we attended Jake's wedding. I cried through the whole thing. You okay? Ethan whispered. Just emotional, I replied, remembering our wedding, how scared I was. You were terrified, Ethan agreed, but you showed up. But I showed up, I confirmed. 24 years after that night, Lily went to college. The house was empty, just us again. This is strange, I said. No kids, no noise, just us. Like the beginning, Ethan said, except we're in our 50s now. We are, I agreed. When did that happen? Time, Ethan replied. Lots of time together. 25 years after that conference, we renewed our vows again, for the second time. In my vows, I talked about 25 years, about how grateful I was that Ethan didn't listen when I said one night. In his vows, Ethan talked about not having any regrets. I've never regretted showing up at your office, he said. Never regretted saying, not for me. Never regretted fighting for us, even when you fought against it. 26 years after that night, Ethan had a health scare, high blood pressure, stress-related. You need to slow down, the doctor said. Ethan retired early from the company he'd built. It's time, he said, to focus on what matters. 27 years after that conference, we became grandparents. Jake had a baby girl, our first grandchild. She's perfect, Ethan kept saying, just like her grandmother. I'm a grandmother, I said. That sounds so old. We are old, Ethan joked. Speak for yourself, I replied. 28 years after that night, we traveled, places we'd always wanted to see. Europe, Asia, South America. This is nice, Ethan said in Paris. Just us, exploring. Should have done this years ago, I said. We were busy building a life, Ethan replied. Now we get to enjoy it. 29 years after that conference, Lily got married to someone she met at work. Another wedding, more tears. They grow up so fast, I told Ethan. They do, he agreed, but we did good, raised good humans. We did, I confirmed. 30 years after that night at the conference, we threw a massive party. 3 decades since we met. 3 decades since I tried to make it casual, since Ethan refused. In my speech, I talked about 30 years, about how one night became a lifetime. 30 years ago, I said, I was scared, hurting from a bad relationship, trying to protect myself by keeping things casual. I told someone it was just one night. He showed up later saying, not for me. At the time, I thought he was crazy, boundary crossing, too intense. But he was also right. One night wasn't enough. What we had deserved more. These 30 years proved that. Ethan gave his own speech. 30 years ago, he said, I met someone at a hotel bar. We talked for hours, had a connection I'd never felt before. The next morning, she left a note saying it was just one night. I couldn't accept that. Showed up at her office 2 weeks later, said, not for me. She thought I was stalking her. Maybe I was, but I preferred to call it persistence, determination, knowing what I wanted and fighting for it. He looked at me. 30 years later, I'm still fighting for us, still grateful she let me. After the party, we sat together, reflecting on 30 years. 30 years, I said. 3 decades since you wouldn't take no for an answer. Would you have preferred I did? Ethan asked. No, I admitted, but it scared me at the time. I know it did, Ethan said. I could see it, but I also saw something else. What? I asked. That you wanted someone to fight for you, Ethan explained. Someone who wouldn't give up just because you were scared. I did want that, I agreed. I just didn't know it. 31 years after that conference, we faced another health crisis. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Early stage, treatable, but terrifying. I'm scared, I told Ethan. I know, he said, but we'll fight this together, like we've fought everything. The treatment was brutal. Chemotherapy, radiation. Ethan was there for all of it. 32 years after that night, I went into remission. The cancer was gone. We have more time, the doctor said. Good, Ethan replied. We need more time. 33 years after that conference, we moved to a smaller house, something manageable for just us. This is nice, I said, after all those years in the big house. Starting fresh, Ethan agreed. Again. 34 years after that night, Jake had another baby, our second grandchild, a boy this time. 2 grandchildren, Ethan said. We're building a legacy. We are, I agreed. 35 years after that conference, we celebrated another milestone. 35 years since we met. In my speech, I talked about how grateful I was for Ethan's persistence.
You changed my life, I told him, by refusing to accept my walls, by fighting for us. Ethan's response was simple. You were worth fighting for, he said. 36 years after that night, Lily had a baby, a girl. 3 grandchildren now. Our family was growing. This is everything, I told Ethan, watching our family expand. It is, he agreed, all because one night turned into forever. 37 years after that conference, we faced grief again. Ethan's mother passed away. He was devastated. I held him like he had held me, supported him through the loss. 38 years after that night, we renewed our vows a 3rd time, because we could, because we wanted to. In my vows, I talked about 38 years, about choosing each other every day. In his vows, Ethan repeated what he'd said dozens of times. Not for me, he said. One night was never enough. 38 years later, it's still not enough. 39 years after that conference, we settled into retirement life, babysitting grandchildren, traveling when we wanted, living simply. This is the good life, Ethan said. It is, I agreed. 40 years after that night at the conference, we threw another massive celebration. 4 decades since we met. 4 decades since I said one night, since Ethan said not for me. In my speech, I reflected on 40 years, on a lifetime built from one night. 40 years ago, I said, I walked into a hotel bar, met someone who would change my life, tried to keep it casual, one night only. He refused, showed up at my office, insisted we try, wore down my defenses until I admitted what we had was special. These 40 years have been everything. The good, the bad, the beautiful, the hard, all of it, worth it, because we chose each other every day for 40 years. Ethan's speech was emotional, more than I'd ever seen him. 40 years ago, he said, I made a decision to not accept one night, to show up uninvited, to push past boundaries, to fight for something I felt was real. Looking back, it was risky, could have gone wrong, could have made me look like a stalker instead of a romantic. But it didn't, because Emma gave me a chance, let me prove that what we had was worth more than one night. He paused. I've never regretted that decision, never regretted fighting for us. 40 years later, I'd do it all again. After the party, we sat together. 40 years, I said. 4 decades since you changed my life. Our lives, Ethan corrected. You changed mine too. How? I asked Ethan. By letting me in, Ethan said. By giving us a chance despite your fear. By building this life with me. I'm glad I did, I said. Me too, Ethan agreed. 41 years after that conference, we faced more health challenges, both of us aging, needing more doctor visits, more medication. This is what getting old looks like, I joked. Better than the alternative, Ethan replied. True, I agreed. 42 years after that night, Jake's oldest daughter graduated high school, our oldest grandchild, an adult. When did we get this old? I asked Ethan. Gradually, he said, then suddenly. 43 years after that conference, we celebrated another anniversary, just us, quiet dinner at home. 43 years, I said, since you showed up at my office. Best surprise of my life, Ethan replied. Even though I was angry? I asked. Especially because you were angry, Ethan said. It showed you cared.
that it mattered. 44 years after that night, Ethan was diagnosed with Parkinson's. Early stages, progressive. "I'm scared," Ethan admitted. "Me too," I said. "But we'll face this together, like everything else." The disease progressed slowly but steadily. Ethan needed more help. 45 years after that conference, we moved again to senior living with medical support nearby. "This feels like defeat," Ethan said. "It's being smart," I corrected, "taking care of ourselves." 46 years after that night, we celebrated quietly, just us, reflecting on nearly 5 decades together. 46 years, Ethan said, since I refused to let you go. Best refusal ever, I agreed. "Do you remember that morning?" Ethan asked, "when you left the note?" "I remember," I confirmed. "I thought I was being smart, protecting myself." "You were protecting yourself," Ethan said. "I just happened to be more stubborn than your walls were strong." 47 years after that conference, Ethan's Parkinson's progressed. He needed more care. I was there constantly, helping him, supporting him, like he had supported me through everything. "I'm sorry," Ethan said. "For what?" I asked. "For being a burden," Ethan replied. "You're not a burden," I said. "You're my husband, the man who fought for me 47 years ago. Now it's my turn to fight for you." 48 years after that night, we celebrated our anniversary in his room at the assisted living facility. 48 years, I said, since you said, "not for me." "Still true," Ethan replied, his voice weak but certain. "Still not for me. One night will never be enough." 49 years after that conference, Ethan passed away, peacefully, in his sleep, with me holding his hand. At his funeral, our children spoke. Jake went first. "My father taught me many things," he said, "about business, about life, about persistence. But the most important lesson was about love, how he met my mother, how she tried to make it one night, how he refused, said, 'not for me,' then spent 49 years proving that one night was just the beginning." Lily spoke next. "My father was stubborn," she said. "Everyone knew that, but his stubbornness gave us everything because he refused to accept my mother's boundaries 49 years ago, insisted on more, fought for it, and built a family, a life, a legacy." After the funeral, I went through old photos, found one from that conference, the hotel where we met. "I miss you," I whispered. 1 year after Ethan died, I wrote about our story, about that night, about his persistence, about 49 years together. The story went viral. People connected with it, with the idea that sometimes love requires fighting for, that one night can become forever if you're willing to risk. 2 years after losing Ethan, I published a memoir called Not For Me, after his words that changed everything. In the book, I was honest about being scared, about trying to push him away, about him refusing to accept that, about building a life together despite my fear. 3 years after Ethan's death, I gave talks about love and persistence and taking chances. People would ask questions. "How did you know he was different?" someone asked. "I didn't at first," I admitted. "I thought he was boundary crossing, too much. But over time, I understood. He wasn't trying to control me. He was trying to show me what we could have." "Would you recommend someone do what he did?" another person asked. "Show up uninvited? Push past boundaries?" "It's complicated," I replied. "In most cases, no. Respect boundaries. But Ethan saw something I couldn't see, that my walls were about fear, not desire, that I wanted someone to fight for me. That's rare and risky." 4 years after losing him, I reflected on our story, wrote about it more, shared it widely, because it taught something important about taking chances, about not letting fear control you, about building something real. 5 years after Ethan died, I passed away, peacefully, at 83. They buried me next to Ethan, 2 people who built 49 years from one night. The headstone read simple words, "Emma and Ethan Cross, one night became forever." Because he said, "not for me." Years later, people still told our story about the one-night stand that refused to stay one night, about persistence and love and taking chances. Our grandchildren shared it. Our great-grandchildren learned it. The story became legend, a reminder that sometimes the best things come from refusing to accept limitations, from fighting for what you believe in, from saying, "not for me," when someone else says, "one night." She told him it was one night. He showed up later saying, "not for me." Those words echoed through 49 years, through building a marriage, through raising children, through facing challenges, through everything. That's the power of persistence. That's what happens when someone refuses to give up. That's Ethan and Emma. One night that became 49 years, all because he wouldn't accept anything less. Decades after we both passed, the story continued. Our children shared it with their children, about how Grandma tried to make it one night, about how Grandpa refused, about 49 years that followed. The story resonated, generation after generation, because it contained truths about love and persistence and taking chances. Relationship counselors used our story as an example of healthy persistence, of recognizing when walls are about fear rather than genuine disinterest. Ethan saw Emma was scared, they'd explain, not uninterested. There's a difference. Knowing that difference matters. But they also warned about the line between persistence and harassment, between fighting for someone and ignoring their autonomy. Ethan's approach worked because Emma was conflicted, counselors would say. She wanted connection but was afraid. That's different from someone who's genuinely not interested. Respecting that distinction is everything. Universities taught our story in relationship psychology courses as a case study about fear and vulnerability, about how past trauma affects present relationships. Emma's bad relationship made her scared, professors would explain. She erected walls to protect herself. Ethan saw past those walls to the fear underneath. Students would debate whether Ethan's persistence was appropriate. Some argued it was romantic. Others called it boundary crossing. Both perspectives had merit. The answer depended on nuance, on understanding intention, on recognizing the difference between fear and disinterest. Dating coaches referenced our story, teaching about reading signals, about understanding when someone is scared versus uninterested. Look for mixed signals, they'd say. Emma told Ethan one night, but also gave her real name, her real job, information that let him find her. That's not someone who wants to disappear. That's someone conflicted.
But they emphasized caution. Not everyone sending mixed signals wants to be pursued. Sometimes people are just being polite, or scared, or unclear. Reading that correctly requires emotional intelligence. Business leaders used our story differently, about persistence in general, about not taking no for an answer when you know something is right. Ethan refused to accept one night, they'd say, applied that same persistence to his business, to his life. That determination matters. But they clarified, persistence in business is different from persistence in relationships. Different rules, different ethics, different consequences. Self-help books featured our story, about overcoming fear, about taking chances, about building something real. Emma was terrified, authors would write, had been hurt before, built walls to protect herself. But she also took a chance, let Ethan prove himself, built a life despite her fear. That courage matters. Years turned into decades. Our great-great-grandchildren grew up knowing fragments of the story, about ancestors who met at a conference, about one night becoming 49 years. The details blurred with time, but the essence remained. One person fought for love, the other let them. Together, they built something lasting. On the 50th anniversary of Ethan's death, the family gathered at the place where we met. The hotel had been renovated, but the bar remained. 50 years ago, our granddaughter said, Great-Grandpa Ethan died, but his story lives on, about refusing to accept one night, about fighting for love, about building 49 years from one meeting.
The family raised glasses, toasted to our memory, to the love that started it all. Museums featured exhibits about changing relationship dynamics, about how dating evolved over decades, about different approaches to romance. Emma and Ethan represented a shift, curators would explain, from formal courtship to casual hookups to something in between. Their story showed how casual can become serious, how one night can become forever if both people are willing. Sociologists studied our relationship as part of research on modern romance, on how relationships form, on what makes them last. Their findings were published, case studies, academic papers, all trying to understand what made us work. The answers converged. We communicated, we fought for each other, we grew together, we faced challenges as a team. Simple concepts, but powerful in practice. Therapists recommended our story to clients, particularly those scared of commitment, those building walls after being hurt. Read this, they'd say. Understand that fear is normal, that walls are common, but also that letting someone in can be worth it. Some clients connected with my perspective, with being scared, with trying to protect yourself. Others connected with Ethan's, with seeing something worth fighting for, with refusing to give up. Both perspectives taught something. Podcasts discussed our story. Relationship podcasts, self-help podcasts, history podcasts, each analyzing different aspects. The romantic aspect, the psychological aspect, the sociological aspect. Hosts would debate, was Ethan's persistence appropriate, or was it problematic? The answer was nuanced, complicated, depended on perspective. Some argued it was beautiful, others called it concerning. Most landed somewhere in between. Films were made about us, dramatizations of our story, some accurate, others wildly fictionalized. Ethan would have found it amusing, I thought, how our simple story became legend. Young people discovered the story through social media, shared it, debated it, created their own versions. Some romanticized it, others critiqued it, all engaged with it. The story sparked conversations about persistence, about boundaries, about how to know when to fight and when to walk away. Those conversations mattered, even when people disagreed, especially when they disagreed. Writers used our story as inspiration. Romance novels, screenplays, short stories, each interpretation different, each capturing something about what it means to take chances, to fight for love, to build something real. Philosophers discussed our story in terms of free will versus fate. Did we choose each other, or were we destined to meet? Ethan believed in fate, they'd note, thought that conference was meant to happen. Emma believed in choice, that we built something through decisions. Both perspectives were valid, both contributed to what we became. Teachers used our story in class, about relationships, about communication, about understanding nuance. What can we learn from Emma and Ethan, they'd ask. Students would offer different answers, about persistence, about vulnerability, about taking chances, about communication. All valid lessons. Decades after our deaths, a documentary was made, featuring interviews with our children, our grandchildren, friends who knew us. The documentary explored our relationship, from that first night to 49 years later, from Ethan's perspective and mine. The film won awards, was shown in film festivals, sparked more discussions.
About love, about persistence, about what makes relationships work. Critics analyzed it. Some praised the romance, others questioned the power dynamics. All recognized the story resonated, touched something universal about human connection. On the 100th anniversary of that conference, the family held a massive gathering, hundreds of descendants, all connected to that one night. A speaker addressed the crowd. 100 years ago tonight, she said, our ancestors met at a conference, had what great-great-grandma Emma thought would be one night. Great-great-grandpa Ethan thought differently, showed up at her office, said, "Not for me." That moment changed everything, created this family, this legacy, these hundreds of people. The crowd reflected on a century of impact from one night, from one refusal to accept limitations. Later, people shared stories about how our example influenced them.
One man talked about fighting for his relationship. "We were going through a rough patch," he said. "She wanted to give up. I remembered great-great-grandpa Ethan, how he refused to give up. So I fought. We're still together." A woman discussed taking chances. "I was scared to date after divorce," she explained. "Built walls like great-great-grandma Emma. Then someone persistent came along. I let them in. We're married now." The stories continued, each person influenced by our example, each learning to take chances, to fight for love, to build something real. In the end, the story became bigger than us, became a reminder that one night can become forever, that persistence can matter, that taking chances is worth it, that love requires fighting for. She told him it was one night. He showed up later saying, "Not for me." Those words echoed through a century, through building families, through inspiring millions, through teaching about love and persistence and taking chances. That's the power of refusing to accept limitations. That's what happens when someone fights for what they believe in. That's Ethan and Emma Cross. One conference, one night, one refusal, 49 years together, a century of impact. All because he said, "Not for me," and I eventually said yes. The story spread globally, beyond America, into different cultures, each interpreting it through their own lens. In some cultures, Ethan's persistence was seen as romantic, as proof of dedication, as what real love looks like. In others, it was viewed more critically, as boundary crossing, as not respecting Emma's stated wishes. Both perspectives were discussed, debated, considered. International relationship experts weighed in, from Tokyo to London to Mumbai to Rio, each offering cultural context. In some places, arranged marriages are normal, they'd note. In others, casual dating is expected. Ethan and Emma's story exists somewhere in between. That in-between space resonated, showed that relationships can start casually, can become serious, can last decades, if both people are willing. Psychologists worldwide studied fear-based behavior, how trauma affects future relationships, how people build walls to protect themselves. Emma became a case study of someone hurt before, who built protective walls, who needed someone to show her it was safe to love again. But they emphasized individual variation. Not everyone needs someone to push past their walls. Sometimes walls are healthy. Sometimes they should be respected. Knowing the difference requires wisdom. Dating apps referenced our story in marketing, in advice columns, in success stories. "One night can become forever," they'd advertise, "if you give it a chance." Critics argued this was misleading, that most one-night stands should stay that way, that Ethan and Emma were the exception, not the rule. Both points were valid. Marriage counselors shared our story with struggling couples. "Remember why you fought for each other," they'd say. "Remember when you refused to give up. That same persistence can save your marriage." Some couples connected, remembered their beginnings, recommitted to fighting for their relationship. Others realized they were done fighting, that sometimes letting go is healthier than persisting. Our story taught both lessons, when to fight, when to walk away. The wisdom was knowing which applied. Universities created courses about relationship formation, using our story as the central case study. Students analyzed every aspect: the conference meeting, the one night, Ethan showing up, the slow progression to commitment. 49 years of marriage. Each phase offered lessons about attraction, about fear, about building trust, about maintaining relationships, about growing together. Professors noted the complexity, how our story resisted simple categorization. Was it romantic? Yes. Was it problematic? Maybe. Was it real? Absolutely. That complexity made it worth studying. Romance novelists analyzed our story, trying to capture what made it work: the persistence of the hero, the resistance of the heroine, the slow breakdown of walls, the building of trust. Many novels followed similar patterns because readers connected with the dynamic, with the idea of someone fighting for love, with walls coming down.
But writers also added modern updates, more communication, more explicit consent, more mutual decision-making, learning from our story while adapting it. Feminist scholars debated our relationship. Some argued Ethan's persistence was paternalistic, that he didn't respect Emma's autonomy, that showing up uninvited was inappropriate. Others saw nuance, noted that Emma gave mixed signals, that she was conflicted, not uninterested, that Ethan read the situation correctly. Both perspectives were published, discussed, considered. The debate itself was productive. Films and books about consent used our story as a complicated example of how to read signals, of how to understand what someone wants versus what they say. It's not simple, educators would explain. Emma said one night, but also gave Ethan her real information. Those mixed signals required interpretation, but they emphasized, in unclear situations, assume no. Better to miss a connection than violate boundaries. Ethan got lucky that Emma's no was about fear. That's not always the case. Podcasters interviewed relationship experts about our story, about what it taught. The consensus was complex. Our story worked because of specific circumstances. Emma was scared but interested. Ethan was persistent but respectful. They communicated eventually. They grew together. But the experts warned, don't use this as a playbook. Every situation is different. What worked for Ethan and Emma might not work for others. Social media influencers shared our story, some celebrating the romance, others critiquing the dynamics. Comment sections debated, thousands of opinions, millions of perspectives. The conversation itself became the story, not just about us, but about what we represented, about persistence, about boundaries, about how to navigate relationships. Years continued passing. Technology changed, society evolved, relationship norms shifted, but our story remained, still taught, still discussed, still relevant, because the core truths were timeless. People get scared. People build walls. People sometimes need someone to fight for them. People sometimes need to fight for themselves. Both can be true. On the 150th anniversary of that conference, scholars gathered to discuss our legacy, to analyze our impact, to consider what our story taught. Papers were presented about relationship formation, about persistence and boundaries, about fear and vulnerability, about communication and consent. Each paper added nuance, added understanding, added context. The conclusion was unanimous. Our story mattered, not because it was perfect, but because it was real, because it started conversations, because it taught lessons, both about what to do and what to question. Museums added our story to exhibits, about relationship history, about how dating evolved, about changing social norms. Visitors would read about us, about that conference, about Ethan showing up, about 49 years together. Some saw romance, others saw red flags, most saw both. That complexity was the point. Young people studying our story asked questions. Would this work today, in this era, with these norms? The answer was uncertain. Maybe, maybe not. Depends on the people, depends on the circumstances, depends on communication. That uncertainty was okay. Not every story needs a clear moral. Sometimes the value is in the discussion, in the questioning, in the thinking. Our great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren inherited the story, passed down so many generations. Details were fuzzy, but the core remained. Ancestors who met at a conference one night became 49 years because someone refused to give up. That narrative resonated, even stripped of details, even simplified to essentials. The truth underneath remained powerful. In the end, the story became mythology, larger than life, teaching generations about love and persistence and taking chances. She told him it was one night. He showed up later saying, "Not for me." 9 words that started everything.
That built a marriage. That created a family. That taught the world about fighting for what you want, about taking chances despite fear, about building something real. That's Emma and Ethan Cross. One conference, one night, one refusal to accept limits. 49 years of marriage, over a century of impact. All because he said, "Not for me," and because I eventually agreed. That's the full story, from that night to now, from two people to millions influenced, from one moment to eternal lessons, about love, about persistence, about knowing when to fight and when to respect boundaries, about building something that lasts. That's our legacy, not perfect, but real, not simple, but meaningful, not a blueprint, but a reminder that sometimes the best things come from refusing to accept limitations, from fighting for what matters, from taking chances, from saying, "Not for me," when someone else says, "Just one night," forever. The philosophical implications of our story were discussed in academic circles, about free will versus determination, about the role of chance in life, about how one decision creates ripples. Did Ethan and Emma have a choice, philosophers asked, or was their meeting destined? Ethan believed in destiny, that the conference was meant to happen, that meeting Emma was fate. Emma believed in choice, that we created our relationship through decisions, through choosing each other daily. Both perspectives coexisted. Both were true in their own way. Religious scholars found meaning in our story, about divine intervention, about God's plan, about how the universe brings people together. Some saw Ethan's persistence as divinely inspired, as God making sure Emma didn't miss her soulmate. Others saw human agency, two people choosing love, creating their own path. Both interpretations offered comfort, suggested that love can be both found and chosen. Poets wrote about us, capturing the romance, the complexity, the journey from one night to forever. "One night," she said, they'd write. "Forever," he insisted. Both were right, both were wrong. Love lives between. Artists created works inspired by our story, paintings, sculptures, installations, each interpretation different, some romantic, others questioning, all engaging. The art sparked conversations about love, about power, about agency, about how we tell stories of romance. Songwriters composed pieces about persistence and love and taking chances. "Not for me," the lyrics would go. "One night will never be enough." The songs played on radio, streamed online, became wedding favorites. Musicians interviewed about the inspiration, talked about our story, about what it meant to them. Each had their own interpretation. Business schools taught our story differently, not about romance, about persistence in general, about refusing to accept limitations. Ethan didn't accept one night, professors would say, applied that same determination to his career, built a successful company. That mindset matters, students learned, about not taking no as an answer, about fighting for what you believe in, about persistence as a skill. But they also learned nuance, about when to persist, when to pivot, when to walk away. Different contexts require different approaches. Entrepreneurs cited our story as inspiration for their journeys. Investors said no, they persisted. Partners said impossible, they insisted. Success seemed unlikely, they fought anyway. Some succeeded, others failed. But all learned that persistence alone isn't enough. Need timing, luck, skill. Ethan had all three. Wisdom literature referenced our story as an example of knowing yourself, of understanding what you want, of fighting for it. Ethan knew he wanted Emma, didn't let her fear stop him. That clarity matters, but so does reading the situation, knowing when you're fighting for someone versus fighting against their wishes. That distinction is everything. Self-help books continued featuring us decades after our deaths. Centuries later, the lessons remained relevant about overcoming fear, about taking chances, about building something real. Emma's journey from fear to love inspired millions. Ethan's persistence encouraged countless others. Together, we taught about partnership, about growth, about choosing love daily. Educational curriculums included our story in high schools, in colleges, in adult learning programs. Students analyzed, debated, questioned, learned. The story became a teaching tool about relationships, about communication, about understanding complexity, about thinking critically. TEDx Talks featured our story, speakers discussing love and persistence and boundaries, each offering their perspective, each teaching something different. Audiences engaged, asked questions, shared their own stories. Our story became a starting point for deeper conversations. Wikipedia pages detailed our lives, the conference, the relationship, the 49 years, the legacy. Editors debated what to include, what emphasis to give, how to present the complexity. The page was viewed millions of times, edited constantly, remained one of the most discussed relationship stories.
Online forums debated our story. Thousands of threads, millions of comments, people sharing opinions, personal experiences, different perspectives. The discussions were passionate, sometimes heated, always engaging. Our story touched something universal. Libraries archived everything about us. Books we wrote, articles about us, academic studies, films, documentaries, everything. Researchers could access it all, study our impact, understand our influence, measure our legacy. The data was clear. We mattered, not just to our family, but to culture, to how people thought about relationships, to conversations about love. That mattered more than we could have known. Living our lives, raising our family, building our relationship. We didn't know we were creating history, inspiring millions, teaching generations. We were just two people, trying to build something real, trying to choose each other daily, trying to make it work. That's what made it powerful. The ordinariness, the relatability, the humanity. We weren't perfect. We struggled, fought, questioned, grew. That journey resonated because everyone struggles, everyone fights, everyone questions and grows. We just did it together for 49 years, and that became the story. Not the perfect romance, but the real one. Not the easy path, but the chosen one. Not destiny alone, but choice and chance and commitment. She told him it was one night. He showed up later saying, "Not for me." 9 words echoed through time, through generations, through cultures, through countless lives, teaching, inspiring, reminding that love requires courage, that fear is normal, that walls can come down, that persistence can matter, that boundaries should be respected, that communication is key, that relationships take work, that choosing someone daily matters more than the perfect beginning. All of those lessons, from one story, from 2 people, from 49 years. That's the complete legacy. That's what remains centuries later. That's Emma and Ethan Cross, forever. From one conference to centuries of wisdom, from 9 words to eternal lessons, from 2 imperfect people to a story that taught millions about love and persistence and taking chances despite fear. The legacy continues in every relationship that starts casually and becomes serious, in every person who takes a chance on love despite being scared, in every couple choosing each other daily through challenges and growth and everything life throws at them. Our story proved something important, that one night can become forever if both people are willing to fight for it, that persistence matters when it comes from love, not control, that walls can come down when someone shows you it's safe, that fear is normal but shouldn't stop you from living, that building something real takes work, but it's worth it, every single day for decades. She told him it was one night. He showed up later saying, "Not for me." 9 words that started a conversation lasting 49 years. 9 words that built a marriage, teaching generations. 9 words that proved love is both found and chosen. That's the eternal truth. That's what remains forever, across centuries, teaching millions about choosing love over fear, choosing partnership over walls, choosing to build something real together, one day at a time for 49 beautiful, imperfect years, filled with challenges and growth and daily decisions to keep choosing each other through everything life brought. Through raising children, facing health scares, building careers, losing parents, becoming grandparents, and growing old together, proving that one night can absolutely become forever when two people are brave enough to take the chance, to fight for what matters, to let walls come down and build something lasting. That inspired generations, showed the world that persistence rooted in love, not control, can change everything. Teach everyone that one night really can become forever. Did you like my story? Which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.